You walk through the Sek, a narrow canyon carved by flash floods over millions of years. The walls close in 160 meters of winding rock, 3 to 12 meters wide, rising 80 meters above you. Then the passage opens. Pink sandstone glows in morning light. Columns tower 39 meters high. The treasury, millions. Recognize the facade from a movie where Harrison Ford searches for the Holy Grail. Most people think they know Petra. They don't. The treasury isn't a treasury. It never held treasure. The urn carved above the entrance, solid sandstone riddled with bullet holes from Bedouins who believed the legend. The building itself, not a temple, not a bank, a tomb. Carved around the 1st century AD for a king who might be Aretas IV, though we're still not certain. Inside, plain chambers. No gold, no inscriptions naming the dead. Until August 2024, every tomb in Petra told us almost nothing about Nabataean burial practices because they'd been looted centuries ago. Then, ground-penetrating radar found something 12 feet beneath the treasury entrance, a chamber. 18 by 18 feet, 9 feet tall, 12 complete skeletons, the first intact burials ever recovered from Petra's 200 years of archaeology. One skeleton held a ceramic chalice. Media called it the Holy Grail. Archaeologists dated the tomb between mid-1st century BC and early 2nd century AD. Tim Kinnaird from University of St. Andrews ran sediment analysis, published October 2024. The bodies, the bronze vessels, the iron artifacts, the pottery, all sealed for 2,000 years in prime real estate at Petra's main entrance. If you value documented archaeological discovery and the dismantling of popular myths, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Smithsonian Magazine's October 2024 report and peer-reviewed analysis from the University of St. Andrews School of Earth and Environmental Sciences, backed by ground-penetrating radar data published in NPR's October 16, 2024 coverage and the American Center of Research excavation findings. Now back to the information. Petra was a thriving metropolis housing 20,000 to 30,000 people at its peak in the 1st century AD. Homes, markets, temples, public baths, gardens, a colonnaded street, a theater holding 3,000 spectators carved into solid rock. The tombs? Over 600 facades scattered across 264 square kilometers. They're the most visible structures because they're carved into cliffsides, but they represent a fraction of what existed. Most of the city remains unexcavated beneath centuries of sediment and collapsed structures. Walk past the treasury, the Sek widens into an open valley. The street of facades lines the path. Rows of simpler tomb entrances, no elaborate columns, just rectangular doorways cut into rose-red stone. Further down, the Roman theater appears, carved during the 1st century AD, then expanded after Rome annexed the kingdom in 106 AD. Beyond that, the colonnaded street stretches through the city center, flanked by the ruins of shops, markets, the great temple complex, the Temple of the Winged Lions, Qasr al-Bint Temple still standing to 23 meters. The royal tombs dominate the eastern cliffs. The urn tomb measures 27 meters wide, 18 meters high, stands on a massive platform supported by arched vaults. Inside, in a single chamber measuring 19 by 17 meters. In 447 AD, it was converted into a church, one of many Christian modifications during Byzantine rule. The palace tomb stretches 49 meters across, 46 meters high, designed to resemble a Roman palace with multiple stories. The Corinthian tomb mimics the treasury's style, but less ornate. These monuments marked status. Location mattered. Visibility demonstrated power. The wealthy carved their eternal homes where trade caravans entered the city. Say that name again. Nabataeans, not Nabataeans. Arab people who emerged from northern Arabia sometime during the Persian period, 5th or 4th century BC. By 312 BC, they controlled the region around Petra, then called Rakemu in their language. Greek general Antigonus, one of Alexander the Great's successors, sent Athenaeus with 4,000 infantry and 600 cavalry to raid the rock, where Nabataeans gathered for a festival. The attack came while the men were away trading. Athenaeus looted tons of spices and silver, but the Nabataeans tracked the retreating army, annihilated them in the desert at night. Antigonus sent another force, same result. The Nabataeans knew the desert. They dug cisterns covered and marked with signs only they could read. Diodorus wrote about it in the 1st century BC. These people survived in waterless regions by hiding water sources from everyone else. When enemies pursued them, the Nabataeans retreated into terrain where outsiders died of thirst. The invaders always surrendered first. This strategy kept them independent for 4 centuries while empires rose and fell around them. The Assyrians couldn't conquer them. The Persians left them alone. The Seleucids failed. Even early Rome couldn't take them. Pompey sent forces in 63 BC. King Aretas III either defeated the Romans or paid tribute. Sources conflict, but he kept Damascus and his kingdom. The Nabataeans controlled trade routes from southern Arabia to Gaza. Frankincense, myrrh, spices, silk, ivory flowed north through Petra. They charged 25% tax on all goods entering their territory. That tax built the city, funded the hydraulic systems, paid for monuments that still stand. Now, here's what nobody talks about. Petra gets less than 4 inches of rain annually. 4 inches. The city thrived in an environment that should have supported maybe a few hundred people, not tens of thousands. The Nabataeans engineered a water system covering over 200 kilometers of clay pipelines, documented by archaeological surveys published by the American Society of Civil Engineers. 9 natural springs provided the base supply, with Ain Musa, Moses' well, dominating the flow. But springs weren't enough. The Nabataeans captured every winter rainstorm. Channels carved into the Sek walls carried water into the city. You can see them today, running along both sides of the canyon at different heights. Dams blocked seasonal floods. Terraces on hillsides funneled rainfall into collection points. Cisterns dug into bedrock, lined with waterproof cement made from crushed limestone mixed with volcanic ash, stored water underground where evaporation couldn't touch it. Some cisterns are still functional today, used by Bedouins. The system delivered 1,800 cubic meters per day, calculated from population estimates and per capita requirements, published in Archaeological Magazine's March 2023 issue. That's 475,000 gallons daily. In the city center, a monumental pool measured 150 feet long, 75 feet wide, 8 feet deep, with a pavilion on a central island. Discovered by archaeologist Lee Ann Badal, the pool consumed massive amounts of water for what was essentially a display of wealth. Visiting dignitaries saw a desert city wasting water on decorative pools and fountains. The message was clear: we control resources you can't imagine. The pool was built during the reign of Aretas IV, who ruled from 9 BC to 40 AD. After Rome annexed Petra in 106 AD, the pool continued operating because Romans understood the propaganda value. Some scholars proposed it was a library, noting that Petra became a Christian theological center by the 4th century AD. Bishop Asterius of Petra attended debates on the Arian controversy mid-4th century. Nestorius used Petra as his base of operations. These facts led to speculation about earlier intellectual activity, maybe a library housing scrolls, but the 2024 tomb discovery beneath the treasury provides the strongest evidence for its original function, a mausoleum. The architectural style screams Hellenistic influence, broken pediment, central tholos, Corinthian columns throughout. The design originated in Alexandria, the greatest city in the eastern Mediterranean at the time. Sculptures depict mythological figures associated with the afterlife, 4 eagles at the top to carry away souls, dancing Amazons with double axes on the upper level, statues of Castor and Pollux, the twins who lived between Olympus and the underworld, flank the entrance. The dating window from the newly discovered tomb, mid-1st century BC to early 2nd century AD, matches the probable construction period of the treasury itself. King Aretas IV remains the leading candidate for the treasury's patron. He was the Nabataeans' most successful ruler, the period when Petra reached maximum population and wealth. The facade measures 25.3 meters wide, 39.1 meters high. The interior? Disappointingly plain. 3 antechambers and 1 main room with a total volume around 2,000 cubic meters. No decoration inside, no paintings, no inscriptions, no elaborate tombs visible in the chambers. Everything of value was either removed by looters or placed in the underground tombs that archaeologists are only now discovering. By the 2nd century BC, they'd developed a sophisticated urban culture. They minted coins showing their kings' faces, proof of economic and political independence. Inscriptions in Nabataean Aramaic cover the region. They traded with India, East Africa, South Arabia, Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Mediterranean world. Strabo described Nabataean men as orderly and acquisitive, wholly intent on trade. They ate meals in groups of 13, attended by 2 musicians. Even the king participated in communal dining. Athenodorus, a philosopher who visited Petra in the 1st century BC, reported many Romans and foreigners residing there. He noted that strangers frequently litigated with each other and with natives, but the natives never had disputes among themselves. That's what organized law and strong social cohesion looks like. The Greek language became common after Roman annexation, but before that, Nabataean Aramaic dominated. It later evolved into early Arabic script. The Nabataeans worshipped Dushara as their chief deity, along with Aluza, a powerful goddess. Sacrifices were common. The Temple of the Winged Lions, probably dedicated to Al-Uzza, held elaborate rituals. Qasr al-Bint, the largest freestanding temple in Petra, was dedicated to Dushara. It measured 23 meters wide, functioned from the 1st century BC until the earthquake of 363 AD destroyed it. The historical record from Roman writers says almost nothing about conflict. King Rabel II died, and Rome simply moved in. Trajan sent legions, the 3rd Cyrenaica from Egypt, the 6th Ferrata from Syria, and by 107 AD, they occupied Petra and Bostra. No triumph was celebrated in Rome, which usually meant minimal resistance. The Via Nova Traiana, a Roman road from Aqaba to Bostra, was completed in the 120s AD, and only then did Trajan mint coins showing. His bust with a camel, commemorating the acquisition of Arabia. But recent evidence changes the story. In 2023, archaeologists using Google Earth and ground surveys identified 3 Roman military camps in southern Jordan, far south of Petra, published in archaeological journals that year. The camps show typical Roman playing card shape, entrances on opposing sides, defensive positioning. They weren't permanent forts. They were temporary marching camps, built as legions advanced through territory. The location suggests a campaign extending deep into Arabia, maybe toward Hegra, over 300 kilometers southwest of Petra. If the annexation was truly peaceful, why did Rome need military camps in the southern desert? Epigraphic evidence also hints at military operations with forces from both Syria and Egypt. The truth probably falls between the extremes: significant Roman military presence, some resistance, but not a prolonged war. The Nabataeans, pragmatic traders who'd played politics with Seleucids, Ptolemies, Hasmoneans, and Romans for centuries, likely recognized that full-scale resistance was suicide. They'd seen what happened to Dacia under Trajan, so they negotiated terms, accepted annexation, kept their trade networks operational. Petra remained important. Trajan declared Bostra the provincial capital, but awarded Petra the status of metropolis, acknowledging its historic and economic significance. The Romans expanded the water system, built new roads, constructed the theater, added public baths, erected monuments in their architectural style. The population remained stable. Shops along the colonnaded street flourished through the 4th and 5th centuries, proven by coin evidence dated to that period. Trade declined, not because of Roman rule, but because sea routes around Arabia became more efficient. Palmyra in Syria attracted caravans away from Petra. The eastern trade route from Myos Hormos to Koptos on the Nile diverted traffic. By the 3rd century AD, Petra's commercial importance had diminished, but the city didn't collapse. It adapted. Agriculture became more important. The Beta area north of Petra produced crops. Terraces built on hillsides supported farming, with construction beginning around 350 to 320 BC and expanding in waves during the 1st century AD, 6th to 7th century AD, and 12th century AD, according to recent agricultural studies. Fish from the Dead Sea appeared in meal remnants. The Nabataeans, always pragmatic, shifted their economic base when circumstances changed. A Syriac letter attributed to Bishop Cyril of Jerusalem recorded the event. The earthquake struck the entire southern Levant: Tiberias, Sepphoris, Nabataean, and Galilee. Hippos across the Jordan River, Petra. Tombs at Gor el Safi recorded casualties in Greek inscriptions: Slitha, daughter of Valentinus, and her daughter Kira, both deceased. Abi, daughter of Samacon, aged 15, died on 28 Artemisios, May 19, 363 AD. Samacon, the archdeacon, aged 40, also killed. These inscriptions date to year 258 of the local calendar, matching 363 AD exactly. The earthquake damaged or destroyed most of Petra's major temples. The Temple of the Winged Lions collapsed. Qasr al-Bint suffered severe structural damage. The great temple complex was abandoned. The water system, Petra's lifeline, sustained critical damage. Channels broke, cisterns cracked, dams failed. Repair required massive resources and skilled engineering that post-earthquake Petra couldn't muster. Some residential areas continued occupation. The urn tomb was converted to a Christian church around 450 AD, indicating the city. Still had a functioning Christian community. Byzantine churches were built in the 5th and 6th centuries. But the civic heart of Petra never recovered from 363 AD. The city center declined. The elite moved away. Shops continued on the colonnaded street through the 4th and 5th centuries, but on a reduced scale. Another major earthquake possibly struck in 419 AD, though geological evidence is ambiguous because distinguishing damage between events only 56 years apart is difficult. Archaeologist Ian Jones from University of California, San Diego examined the evidence in 2021. He concluded the 418 or 419 AD earthquake probably damaged structures in Jerusalem and other areas, but determining specific effects in Petra remains unclear. The Petra papyri, discovered in 1993 in a burned church, record transactions from the 5th and 6th centuries. 140 carbonized scrolls documented a Christian family buying and selling land, paying taxes, managing property. The last reference to a resident bishop is Athenagoras, nephew of Emperor Maurus, dating to the late 6th century. The papyri prove the city functioned during this period, supporting a stable community with an advanced tax system. The earthquake of 551 AD caused more destruction. People rebuilt, they dug out of rubble and continued living in Petra. Anyone claiming Petra was in ruins during Muhammad's lifetime is ignoring the papyri evidence and modern archaeological analysis. The city didn't fall into final abandonment until the earthquake of 746 AD, 128 years after Muhammad's death. That earthquake destroyed Petra and nearby Humaima, a Nabataean town 40 kilometers south. After 746 AD, the population couldn't sustain urban life. The water system was beyond repair. Trade routes had shifted centuries earlier. No economic reason remained to rebuild. Bedouins moved into the ruins seasonally. Islamic rule had arrived decades before, but the final abandonment was environmental and economic, not religious or military. For over 1,000 years, Petra disappeared from Western consciousness. Bedouins knew it, local traditions maintained its location, but European maps forgot. In 1812, Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, pretending to be a Muslim pilgrim seeking the tomb of Prophet Aaron, convinced a Bedouin guide to bring him through the sick. Burckhardt couldn't openly survey the ruins without breaking his cover, so he made quick observations and left. His report reached Europe, sparking interest. Expeditions followed. By the 1820s, a small hotel operated near the site. Detailed surveys began in the late 19th century. The first systematic excavations started in the early 20th century. For 200 years, archaeologists have worked at Petra, and they estimate they've excavated less than 15% of the city. The rest remains underground, waiting for ground-penetrating radar, new excavation techniques, future archaeologists with better tools and methods. Every major structure you see was carved by human hands. The sick is natural, formed by geological activity and water erosion over millions of years. But the channels along its walls? Nabataean engineers cut those. The facades along the street of facades? Carved. The treasury? Carved. The monastery, Petra's largest monument measuring 47 meters wide and 48.3 meters high, located 340 meters above the city on a hilltop? Carved. The entire city is human-engineered achievement in one of Earth's harshest environments. Misconception: Petra was a tomb city. No, tombs are what survive because they're carved into cliffs. Stone endures. But the structures that house 20,000 to 30,000 living people, houses, shops, workshops, those were built from mud brick, wood, less permanent materials. They collapsed, eroded, left foundations we're only now excavating. The visible tombs misled early explorers into thinking Petra was a necropolis. Modern archaeology proves it was a complete urban center with all the infrastructure of a Hellenistic city. Misconception: the treasury held treasure, never. Local Bedouins believed the legend, hence the Arabic name al-Khazna, meaning the treasury of the pharaoh. They believed the urn on the upper level contained treasure, shot at it with rifles to break it open. The urn is solid sandstone, carved from the same cliff face as the rest of the structure. Nothing inside but stone. The treasury was a tomb, probably royal, demonstrating wealth through architecture rather than storing it in vaults. Misconception: Petra declined because Romans destroyed it. False. Rome annexed the kingdom in 106 AD, and Petra thrived for another 2.5 centuries under Roman rule. Coins, pottery, inscriptions all show continuous occupation and economic activity through the 4th century AD. Decline came from shifting trade routes and the catastrophic earthquake of 363 AD, not Roman military action. Misconception: Petra is small. Petra covers 264 square kilometers. The tourist path from the visitor center to the monastery is roughly 10 kilometers one way. Little Petra sits 10 kilometers from the main site. The tomb of Prophet Aaron is 5 kilometers away on top of Jabal Haroun. Most visitors see the treasury, walk the colonnaded street, maybe climb to the monastery. They miss over 600 tomb facades, the residential quarters, the terrace systems, the outlying settlements, the quarries, the cisterns scattered across the landscape. Focus on the engineering because that's where the Nabataeans proved their genius. Water was the constraint. 4 inches of annual rainfall cannot support 30,000 people without extraordinary intervention. The Nabataean system had three components: capture, storage, distribution. Capture meant terraces, channels, dams, and surface preparation. When rain fell, even a light shower, every drop that hit prepared surfaces flowed into collection channels. The terraces on hillsides weren't just for agriculture. They slowed water, prevented erosion, directed flow. The channels along the cyc walls operated at two different heights to handle varying flood levels. During flash floods, the CQ can fill with water reaching several meters deep. The Nabataeans built dams at strategic points to divert floodwaters into side channels, preventing catastrophic damage to the city center while capturing water for storage. Storage meant cisterns. Underground, rock-cut, cement-lined. The cement technology was sophisticated, using pozzolanic materials, crushed limestone mixed with volcanic ash that hardened even underwater. This is Roman-level engineering appearing in Petra by the 1st century BC, possibly earlier. The cisterns had narrow openings to minimize evaporation, wide bottoms to maximize capacity, smooth interiors to prevent sediment buildup. Some cisterns held hundreds of cubic meters. Distribution used clay pipelines with standardized sections, joined with careful sealing to prevent leaks. The pipeline network extended over 200 kilometers, documented by archaeological surveys. The pipes carried water from springs outside the city, from cisterns on hilltops, to fountains in public squares, to the great pool in the city center, to private homes of the wealthy. Pressure systems allowed water to flow uphill through certain sections. The Nabataeans understood hydraulic principles that many ancient cultures never mastered: gravity feed, siphon systems, flow optimization, pressure management. The engineering supported urban life in a location that modern engineers would reject as impossible without industrial technology. Yet the Nabataeans made it work for over 4 centuries. In 2003, explorers found 2 tombs containing partial skeletons on the left side of the treasury. That discovery prompted speculation about more hidden tombs. Richard Bates, geophysicist from University of St. Andrews, led ground-penetrating radar surveys in 2024. The radar detected voids in the subsurface on the right side of the treasury. The team secured permission from the Jordanian government, rare for such a prominent location. Discovery Channel's Expedition Unknown filmed the excavation. Host Josh Gates and archaeologist Pierce Paul Kriesman descended into the chamber in August 2024. 12 complete skeletons: men, women, children, bronze, iron, and ceramic grave goods, 1 skeleton holding a chalice. The tomb measured roughly 18 feet by 18 feet, 9 feet tall. Tim Kinnaird ran sediment dating, published October 2024. Results: mid-1st century BC to early 2nd century AD. For 2 centuries of archaeological investigation at Petra, scholars found nothing like this. Tombs were either empty or contained fragmentary remains. This tomb was intact. The burial practices, the arrangement of bodies, the grave goods, all in original context. Megan Perry, biological anthropologist from East Carolina University, who's excavated at Petra for over 20 years, noted in October 2024, interviews that other excavated tombs at the site contained many more than 12 individuals, and monumental tombs with human remains weren't unprecedented. But she acknowledged the intact context was valuable for reconstructing funeral rituals. Lucy Wadeson from University of Edinburgh stated the discovery would shed light on little-known Nabataean burial practices, since so few unlooted tombs have been excavated. The treasury tomb adds crucial data. Analysis of skeletal remains provides information on diet, health, physical labor, family relations. DNA analysis might reveal genetic connections. Stable isotope studies show geographic origins, whether individuals were native to Petra or immigrants. The ceramic vessels offer chronological markers. The bronze and iron artifacts demonstrate manufacturing capabilities and trade connections. Every detail reconstructs Nabataean society. Petra's population at peak, estimates range from 20,000 to 30,000. Those numbers come from area calculations, water supply capacity, archaeological evidence of building density, and comparative analysis with other ancient cities of similar size and economic base. 20,000 is conservative. 30,000 is possible if the suburban areas and satellite settlements are included. The city wasn't just the central zone tourists visit. Settlements extended into surrounding valleys. Beta to the north provided agricultural output. Little Petra, Sikh Albarid, functioned as a suburb or satellite community, with its own carved facades and cisterns. The landscape around Petra is dotted with remains: guard posts, caravanserais, way stations, farmsteads. The kingdom extended from the Euphrates to the Red Sea at its height under Aretas IV. Damascus was briefly controlled. The Negev region, the Sinai, parts of southern Syria, all fell under Nabataean authority. This wasn't a small tribal kingdom. This was a regional power-managing territory comparable to the Hasmonean kingdom or Herod's domain. The Nabataeans negotiated with Romans as equals through the 1st century BC. Only when Rome committed full legionary strength under Trajan did the kingdom fall. The modern city of Wadi Musa, built adjacent to Petra, houses around 6,000 residents. Many work in tourism. Bedouin families trace ancestry to tribes that never left the area. The Bedouin tribe lived inside Petra until 1985, when the Jordanian government relocated them to a settlement outside the archaeological site. Some Bedouins still maintain tourist services: horses, camels, donkey rides, souvenir shops, tea stalls. Their oral traditions preserve knowledge of the site through centuries when the outside world forgot. Their role as guardians of Petra deserves recognition. Tourism now generates 20% of Jordan's GDP. Petra, inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985, attracts over 1 million visitors annually. That volume creates conservation challenges. Humidity from crowds damages the dry sandstone. Touching, leaning, rubbing on facades causes erosion. The treasury surface has receded 40 millimeters in less than 10 years from direct human contact. White spots from stearic acid deposits appear on walls where hands rest. Flash floods remain a threat. In December 2022, heavy flooding hit Petra, causing damage to pathways and some structures. Climate change may increase both sandstorm frequency and intensity of rainfall events, threatening conservation efforts. Balancing tourism revenue with site preservation is an ongoing challenge. Restricting access to the treasury interior protects fragile structures, though tourists complain. The trade-off between access and preservation will only intensify as visitor numbers grow. The Nabataeans were not peaceful merchant priests spreading incense and goodwill. They were pragmatic, occasionally ruthless traders who controlled a monopoly and defended it with extreme prejudice. When Antigonus's forces attacked their rock fortress in 312 BC, the Nabataean counterattack annihilated the entire force. Thousands killed, no prisoners mentioned. When rivals threatened trade routes, the Nabataeans responded with military force backed by intimate knowledge of terrain that gave them overwhelming advantage. They fought wars against the Hasmoneans, the Seleucids, occasionally the Romans. They allied with Rome against the Jewish revolt of 70 AD, providing troops and logistical support. That wasn't altruism, that was calculation. A weakened Rome would invite chaos in the region. A strong Rome as an ally offered protection and trade access. The Nabataeans survived 4 centuries surrounded by empires because they knew when to fight and when to negotiate. The water cisterns they hid from enemies weren't just engineering. They were weapons. Diodorus explicitly states that armies pursuing Nabataeans into the desert died of thirst because they couldn't find water. Deliberate strategy. Lure enemies into terrain where you control the only resource they need to survive, then watch them die or surrender. This is scorched earth tactics applied to desert warfare. The Nabataeans didn't build Petra out of artistic vision. They built it to demonstrate power, to impress traders, to intimidate rivals, to show that they commanded resources others couldn't dream of. A city in the desert with fountains and pools and monuments requiring thousands of man-hours to carve sands. A message. We are so wealthy, so organized, so technologically superior that we waste resources on decoration. Cross us at your peril. Nabataean tombs feature Assyrian, Egyptian, Phoenician, and Hellenistic influences. The treasury's design comes from Alexandria. The monastery blends Hellenistic broken pediment with Arabian minimalism. The Corinthian capitals on columns throughout Petra show Greek influence but are abstracted in a distinctly Nabataean style. This wasn't cultural confusion. This was sophisticated eclecticism. The Nabataeans absorbed and adapted the best architectural ideas from every culture they encountered through trade. They hired Greek and Roman engineers when needed, they employed Phoenician craftsmen, they studied Egyptian tomb design. Then they created something unique that combined all these influences with their own aesthetic preferences. The result is architecture that looks Hellenistic from a distance, but reveals Arabian character and details. Simplicity and minimalism in decoration, lack of figurative sculpture in most tombs, abstract geometric patterns, aniconic tradition, meaning non-figurative, inherited from earlier Arabian artistic norms. Even the treasury, the most Hellenistic structure in Petra, features sculptural decoration concentrated on the facade, while the interior remains stark. This combination of external grandeur and internal simplicity defines Nabataean architecture. The inscription evidence. Thousands of Nabataean Aramaic inscriptions exist across the region. Short texts, mostly names and occasional dedications. Graffiti carved into rocks along trade routes. Tombs with owner inscriptions. Public monuments with royal dedications. But no lengthy historical texts, no chronicles, no king lists, no detailed records. The Nabataeans were literate but chose not to record their history in permanent form. Why? Some scholars suggest they maintained oral traditions strong enough to make written records unnecessary. Others propose that papyrus and leather scrolls held records that didn't survive. Still others argue the Nabataeans deliberately kept certain information secret for competitive advantage. Trade routes, water sources, business practices, all valuable information better kept from rivals. The lack of historical texts means we reconstruct Nabataean history from external sources, Greek and Roman writers like Diodorus, Strabo, Pliny, and Josephus. We piece together chronology from coin sequences showing royal succession. We date structures from architectural style, pottery assemblages, and occasional inscriptions with regnal year references. The picture is incomplete. Kings like Aretas III and Aretas IV are well attested. Others remain shadowy. The early period before 312 BC is almost blank. The transition from nomadic life to settled urbanism happened during centuries we barely understand. Archaeological excavation slowly fills gaps, but vast areas remain unexplored. Every new dig site adds fragments to the puzzle. But sustained occupation never resumed. The environment was too harsh, the water system too damaged, the trade routes too far shifted. Medieval Arab geographers mentioned Petra occasionally, usually in passing. The site faded from European awareness. Renaissance mapmakers placed it approximately based on classical sources, but nobody had confirmed its location. By the 18th century, Western scholars debated whether Petra existed at all or was a legend conflated with other sites. Burckhardt's 1812 visit confirmed its location and description. His drawings and notes sparked European interest. Explorers arrived throughout the 19th century. Léon de Laborde published detailed illustrations in 1830. David Roberts produced famous lithographs in 1839. Edward Lear painted Petra in 1858. These artistic representations popularized the site in Europe. Archaeological expeditions began seriously in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. German teams, British teams, American teams all excavated different areas. The first comprehensive survey mapped the central city. Excavations at the Great Temple, the Temple of the Winged Lions, the Qasr al-Bint Temple, residential quarters, the Saik outlying areas, all proceeded slowly. Petra is so vast, and the structures so complex that even 200 years of archaeology has barely scratched the surface. Ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery now allow archaeologists to map underground features before digging. These technologies revealed the 2024 Treasury Tomb. They're identifying structures under sediment across the site. The next century of archaeology will likely double our knowledge of Petra. Greek text recording property transactions, tax payments, legal disputes. One family, Theodore and his relatives, conducted business over several decades in the 6th century AD. They owned date palms, olive groves, vineyards. They paid taxes in gold solidi, the standard Byzantine currency. They participated in a functioning economy with property rights, contracts, legal enforcement. This wasn't a dying city. This was a provincial town integrated into the Byzantine economic system, continuing traditions established under Roman rule 3 centuries earlier. The papyri mention locations like Augustopolis, Zadakathon, Sadaka, and other settlements in the Petra region. They reference military units, church officials, landowners, merchants. Social structure remained intact. The church provided spiritual authority. The civil administration collected taxes and arbitrated disputes. The military provided security, though by the 6th century, many forts along the Limes Arabicus had been abandoned. Petra's strategic value had diminished. The city functioned, but no longer commanded regional importance. Then came the earthquake of 551 AD, followed by gradual decline, then the final earthquake of 746 AD that ended permanent occupation. In October 2024, archaeologists stood inside a chamber beneath Petra's most famous monument and documented 12 complete skeletons that had lain undisturbed for 2,000 years. The location, 18 feet below the treasury entrance, prime real estate at the city's main approach, confirms what architectural analysis suggested. The treasury was a royal mausoleum. The grave goods, the burial arrangement, the construction timing all align with the reign of Aretas IV, the king who transformed Petra into a cosmopolitan capital rivaling Alexandria. But who are these 12 individuals? DNA analysis is ongoing. Stable isotope studies will reveal their origins. Bone pathology will show their health, their labor, their diets. One mystery leads to 12 more. The treasury conceals at least 2 more chambers yet to be fully explored. Ground-penetrating radar suggests additional voids. Petra holds thousands of unexcavated structures, uncounted cisterns, unsurveyed terraces, and unmapped ruins scattered across 264 square kilometers of Jordanian desert. The city we think we know from movies and tourist photos represents 15% of what existed. Everything else waits underground, beneath sediment deposited by flash floods, covered by centuries of wind-blown sand, hidden inside mountains we haven't thought to scan with radar. The Nabataeans engineered an urban center that shouldn't exist, controlled trade networks spanning continents, carved monuments that would take modern crews years to replicate with power tools, and established a kingdom that survived 4 centuries surrounded by empires. Then earthquakes, shifting trade routes, and environmental collapse erased them from history until a Swiss explorer's curiosity brought them back into light in 1812. The 12 skeletons beneath the treasury are the first intact Nabataean burials ever recovered from Petra in 200 years of archaeology. First. That word matters. It means we finally have primary evidence of burial practices that scholars have speculated about for generations. It means every assumption about Nabataean death rituals must be reconsidered. And it means Petra, the city we've studied for 2 centuries, just began revealing what it actually knows.